Welcome to this edition of the MDM podcast. I'm Tom Gale. The topic I'd like to explore today with my frequent guest, Mike Marks of Indian River Consulting Group, are the fatal flaws of sales transformation. Welcome, Mike. Good to see you again.
It's good to be seen. It's a great subject because it creates a lot of pain for people when they step in the cow pie.
We're less than 2 months to our Shift conference on September 11th to 13th in Denver, where leaders across distribution will share their insights on how they're getting traction in markets that aren't giving a whole lot in way of tailwinds right now. You'll be moderating a panel on sales transformation as well as a track session on getting sales transformation right with your partner at Indian River, Mike Emerson. And you've been a co-host and originator of the Sales GPS conference series that you and I began in 2017. And the past 3 years have been under the Shift banner to recognize that any meaningful change to sales process requires a more integrated organizational change management effort that includes digital and data analytics. Many distributors who are growing and taking share in 2024 are realizing the impacts of innovation and transformation work that they've invested in to change their business models. People attend Shift each year to see what the future of distribution will look like and how they can playbook their own journey across the key transformation levers across sales process, digital, and data analytics that I just mentioned. We also spend time on what an innovative distribution culture of the future looks like to engage customers more deeply in an increasingly noisy and chaotic marketplace. You'll hear stories of how your peers are navigating their own transformation and innovation journeys across these very connected business components with some great panels, sessions by McKinsey, Gartner, and more, and keynotes that include John Engel, CEO of Wesco, and John Weborg, President and CEO of Stellar Industrial Supply. You can find more detail on our agenda and register at mdm.com/shift 2024. Today, I'd like to focus on sales process transformation and talk about the challenges that teams run into as they try to transition from a more traditional market-serving, outside sales generalist sales model to a more adaptive and digital-forward go-to-market model. And I'd like to go down a list of the top 5 fatal flaws that you've encountered in your work and how people can go about fixing them. What's the biggest roadblock that you've seen in this type of work?
Very simply, it's failing to have proper expectations. And so many people will sit and talk about sales transformation and think about the complexity and because it is hard. You're managing organizational change. And when you survey your sales team and your sales leaders and you say, how are we doing on digital? How are we doing on analytics? How effective is our sales process? And you ask them what they think, are we good? Are we leading? Everybody thinks that they're good because all they see is that it's Groundhog Day and everything's still working. The key thing about proper expectations is they don't know because they're sitting in an echo chamber. They don't know how much the world has actually moved. I mean, a very practical example, one of the attendees at last year's Shift was a newly appointed VP of sales, had a good sales background, but had finally taken over the whole thing and had been working for an old school sales manager. So he kind of went basically because his boss said that he needed to go. And when he got to Shift, he came back. His view was that it was shock and awe. He had no idea any of this stuff was going on and that people were doing it. And so the key point I want to make there is that if people don't have an awareness of what others are doing, they think they're doing fine. They don't realize that they're falling further and further behind. And so as soon as he saw that, he came back and he's introduced more change in the last year and couple months than had happened in the prior 5 years. The only thing that changed, you can go to Shift, you can figure out the stuff to do. It's not hard to figure out the stuff to do, but he decided that once I saw how far behind we were, it was like a burr under a saddle and off they went. So the very first thing I think an executive that's thinking about sales transformation needs to do, you have to take your sales team, your sales leaders, your sales reps, outside, inside, and you have to share with them. They can see what other people are doing. And they said, oh my God, I had no idea we could do that. We just did another study for an industry in terms of adoption of a bunch of this stuff. The sales team they asked for all kinds of things they would like with AI and CRMs and all this other stuff. They didn't ask anything about learning and knowing more about their customers. It wasn't even on their wish list of what they were doing for, because they don't know that there's so much information out there. The very first thing is that people have to understand where's the ball.
I translate that into it's critical to benchmark as far as where you are versus what your peers and competitors are doing, and do some sort of analysis to get a clear view of where you really stand. Because it's really easy for most companies to start some sort of an initiative, whether it's e-commerce or whatever, or they kind of set up their here's where we want to get to, and then it's really just measurement along where they were versus what they identified as what was the right place to get to.
And you see people spend a lot of time and money making little tentative steps and miss the whole point. And so the benchmarking is critical. And there's the real problem here, and this leads to another failure. People just don't take the time to even go out and look. I mean, they aren't aware that it's out there. So you benchmark and find out, because by the way, if you're still have general line sales reps in a geography-based territory and field salespeople are taking care of pricing for you and repeat orders and all that other stuff, you're already past the best by date, and you don't know how far behind you actually are.
You know, what's been really fascinating in our research that you and I have done in our teams has really been around how companies are building these hybrid models and really leveraging digital in extremely effective ways that free up their salespeople to do what they do best, which is build that deeper relationship and engagement, which is what it's all about. And a lot of what we'll be focusing on in September is around customer engagement and what that looks like now. And it's changed so quickly. Artificial intelligence is just about to kick that whole equation to a whole nother level.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's number one. What's number two?
Would be failure to properly prepare. I mean, one of the things that they don't understand that when you talk about sales transformation, you're not talking about doing the same things better. You're talking about doing new things. And the key piece on this, it's not coming up. In the old days, people go to a trade show or an association meeting, they always come up with one or two good ideas, and they go back and they institute the good ideas. That was it. This doesn't work that way. You have to decide what you want it to look like when you're done, and there's major organizational change, and people a lot of times they haven't taken time to develop some change management skills or think I'm the boss so I can just tell them what to do, and it doesn't work. The classic example here are the crammed down CRM systems that you see that have had horrible adoption rates and failures because senior managers put them down and they just say, you will do this, it's good for you. It's like, stop drinking, Mike, eat more kale, and stop eating junk food, and everybody goes, it's good for you, trust me, I'm your boss. And it just doesn't work. And salespeople will typically do enough so that they don't get fired, but they certainly aren't going to grab the application and lead. But one of the things that happens, if you really want to talk about organizational change, this is a key principle. Participation creates commitment. So if you don't do a cram down, what you basically do is you put some tools in, you've answered the what's in it for me question for the various teams that are affected, you roll it out and you track the progress, and you don't do a cram down. You will find anything else, there's a bell curve. There'll be some early adopters. We just went through a CRM thing with a company, and when there was good leadership, the software worked great. And when there was bad leadership or apathetic leadership, this is good for these young people, but I'm never going to use it. Then everybody blames it on the software. So there's something wrong with the software. I mean, one of the strongest sales managers in industrial distribution is a guy named Jason Stein from Border States, and he was very supportive. He did a relaunch on his CRM, and he made a comment in one of the panel discussions we were having. And I mean, this is a very large company. And he said, when we designed the system, we sat down with the managers and we thought we knew what the salespeople wanted, and we were wrong. When we went out, that we kept hitting walls, and then we found out we should have listened to them in the beginning. So to me, if you're thinking about proper preparation, you have to think about, how do I get people engaged so it's their idea and the thing works out? And it's just really, really important in terms of answering the what's in it for me. Cram downs, I mean, sabotage, subtle sabotage. There isn't enough horsepower in the world for you to cram something down and have it work. Not in distribution anyway.
And there's another angle to this. For most distribution organizations, the outside sales team is largely, I won't say autonomous, but they have a very wide berth in terms of how they manage their time and focus and behavior. You've pounded over the years how critical it is for companies to first transition to a mindset of much more management directed and strategically led sales process. You talk about proper preparation and not doing cram down, but how do you get over that hurdle in terms of laying the groundwork for making some change possible when a lot of your sales team and other people in the company are so used to what the old paradigm was for what successful sales process looked like?
Plain language, just get right to the sharp end of the stick. Take the first failure of having expectations that are too low. You have, and nobody wants to do this because it takes time. I just want to tell people what to do and have them go do it. That the corporate leadership and your distributor has to sit down with the sales team and help them develop those same set of expectations. They don't know how bad they are, or they don't know the definition of what good is. They probably think, if you go back to the way things worked in the 90s, they're probably world class. But the bar has gone up, and if you're in an echo chamber, you haven't seen it. And so step one to take these self-directed sales reps is, number one, you have to show them this is what an A-player sales organization looks like today. The second thing you have to do, clearly explain to them that, look, the reason we're changing is not because I went to some stupid seminar. The reason we're changing is that our customers are changing how they want to buy, and we're selling to them the way they used to buy, not the way they want to buy or they're going to buy. And so if we don't change, it's not going to go well for us commercially. So we have to do something, and I want all of you guys to get engaged. Let's make sure we do the right thing. This is going to, CRM as an example, this is going to be your tool. If it ends up screwed up in a year, it's your fault because we're going to have the sales team design it. Because the other thing that goes into this, a lot of these self-directed sales reps are very frustrated because they have virtually no support in the things that they want. They can't get the information they need. They don't have the resources. They have to pray, yell, and scream anytime something comes off the rails because the processes aren't there. If you don't do that preparation work in the front end, you're going to go nowhere. That's when I say proper preparation, well, you either pay up front or you're paying the back.
So you need to put the tools in place that will enable these sales professionals to make the kind of change that they instinctively know. They're plugged into their marketplace. They instinctively know how they are or aren't serving their customers. The good salespeople are. So they are probably frustrated that they don't have the right kind of tools to keep up with the customers. So,
well, it's really interesting. If you sit down and ask the salespeople, what are the biggest obstacles? If I wanted you to sell more, I want you to sell 20% more. And they go, well, I'd love to, but I'm a one-legged man at a butt kicking contest. I can't do it. And then you start to say, what are the things that I can take off your plate? What are the resources that I can bring to you to free up the time that allows you to do that? And nobody even has that discussion. Nobody even has that discussion.
Number three
is failure to recognize and fix poor processes. And this makes me absolute nuts, because what happens, you need to have feedback loops. There's an old saying, that no military expression, no plan ever survives contact with the enemy. So if you actually get your team, if you've set their expectations and all of a sudden they say, hey, this is really, I want to get to what that stuff you showed me. That's really cool. Can I get it tomorrow? No, you can't, but we're working towards it. Right. And then you start to prepare so they understand the pressure that we have to meet our customers, because we want to be the preferred choice for our customers. Right. So if you've gotten through those first failures, then what you start to do is you start to say, what are we doing that we do it because this is the way we've always done it. If you look at a lot of people and distributors, the people doing the jobs learned from the people that came before, and those people learned from the people that came before. When did we actually even mark out what it is that we wanted them to do? And so a lot of these processes don't work. And the thing that kills people, and this, by the way, this is maybe one of the first two that I talked about, they'll keep you from getting off the ground, and it's just stuck. This one, if you screw this up, it just gets really, really expensive. Because what you're doing is you're trying to lay some of the cool analytics that you're doing in the dashboards, and you're doing all these other things that are a part of sales transformation. You're putting it on top of some crappy processes, getting the process redesigned and learning, how do I find a slicker way to take friction out of the customer process? we went through a major change with the company. I won't say who. And the executive said, we want our field sales. This is very early on in sales transformation. And they wanted their salespeople to be market makers, and they wanted inside sales to be market servers. And they went through this whole socialization thing, put the whole thing together, and they actually designed a new incentive plan, right? And so we're advising them, and we talked to the IT guy. Oh, no problem. We got the incentive thing. We measure it. It's all great. We go through all of this change and all of this emotion. And then as we start to run the data, they can't calculate it. They can't make it work in their system because their processes were so clunky. They had to go back and so imagine what you've done when you take 85 salespeople and you've gone through all this stuff, and then you go back and go, we're just kidding. I mean, we'll get back to you on this. And it was just, it's just there's no recovery from that. I mean, yeah. It's just bad. And so what fundamentally happens when you start looking at processes, what we have islands of automation, and we have different roles doing transaction management with customers. And every time we pass it from order entry to the warehouse or inside sales, outside sales, or a product manager, the issue is that it's like a marathon. We keep dropping the baton. And so if you really want to talk about good sales transformation, I want to map out every role. I want to know when the baton's going from one to the other. This is where the AI thing's going to dramatically change everything. And people don't even see that yet because it's all about proximity. And when all of a sudden there's a need, the answer's right there. I mean, it's like literally next to each other. And so getting rid of this dropping the batons is what's going to make the huge difference. And people typically don't look at it until they've already spent a bunch of money on technology, gone through all the change management with the sales force, and then it turns out they have to change the foundation. So to me, this is like, well, we've seen situations, people put together really cool dashboards using Focus or Power BI, and they're out there, but the thing's been so clunky that people can't even use them. This is probably one of the most expensive screw-ups people can make because they go into pilot purgatory and they keep spending money trying to fix it.
So it's one thing to map the processes in terms of being able to identify what you want to do, but I've got to believe that it can get to a level of complexity where it just is a little bit mind-blowing. And where I'm getting to is there's an element of first identifying and mapping the processes, but then you have to prioritize at some point, right? In terms of where you're going to be able to focus and get the highest return on the limited resources, and you can't bite off too much.
The thing you said, the hard word in there that people don't want to do is prioritize. It's the old thing on Southwest Airlines, when they're given the safety briefing, if you've got two children, put the mask on the one you love the most first, and everybody kind of laughs and giggles, but you can't prioritize everything, and some things are more important. I mean, that reflects it in so many different ways. It actually leads me to the fourth failure. It's almost, you can't unhook it from failing to really fix the poor processes. The fourth failure is failure to understand your customers. And I can talk specifically about this because it's in the public domain. But back in 22, we got hired by Motion Industries to do some customer journey mapping. And the reason I'm bringing this up here is that people sit in their own little echo chamber, and when they start to put something together, everybody's got to weigh in on their opinion. You build all these processes in finance and logistics and legal and everybody else. Well, so the punchline is that we mapped the customer journey, and then we mapped the sales process. And the whole point of doing this for any company, that's nothing special, a lot of people do it, is that I want to find the friction points in the customer journey where the sales process touches them. And if there's friction, that helps me identify which ones, and like you say, prioritize and take it out. But this is an example of leadership, and I can talk about this. Randy Bro was the CEO of the company at the time, and then we were at the 22 NAW executive conference. Randy was so excited about that we ended up getting up on the stage, and he actually shared it with everybody. We're sitting up on the stage walking through. The punchline of the story is that when we mapped this whole thing out, there was a chart for like 10-point font, right? So you got to get up close to read it if you're an old guy. It was 6 feet wide and 2.5 feet high. And it had all these boxes. And we first showed the boxes to him. Randy and the guys are going like, hey, we got the wrong consultants. These guys are idiots, blah, blah, blah. And what was cool, though, is we had a best of the best team, 10 of their top salespeople. And the sales team's going, no, that's exactly what we do. And then Randy had a sense of humor failure. And the punchline is that he took probably 30% of those boxes off the chart in less than 90 days. Like Sherman burned his way to the sea in the Civil War. So, but the whole point is it takes friction away from the customer because speed is a weapon, and it took tons of frustration away from their salespeople. I mean, I can tell the story because it's about good leadership, but the real problem is that people get so wrapped up doing their own stuff, they're not paying attention to what they're doing to the customer. There's a lot of unintended consequences, and then people are buying from you in spite of the fact that you're a pain in the butt. I mean, Charlie Munger's whole thing is he says, anytime you buy a company, find every point of friction with the customer and rapidly prioritize them and take them away one after the other. And guess what? If you take the friction out, you don't have to do anything right. You just suck less.
And we'll be talking a lot at the Shift conference
But
specifically.
we got some great stuff this session. I mean, when people see it, they're going to get really pumped.
Absolutely, about the whole aspect of understanding much more deeply where your customers are and how to get closer to them. Let's go to the last one, Mike.
I care about this a lot. If you really want to play the game at the A level, the failure you need to avoid is it's a failure of not having real strategy. And most people don't, they think strategy is some 5-year business forecast, and it always has a hockey stick, and we do some internal echo chamber BS SWOT, and we're going to fix all of our weaknesses. And by the way, I've yet to see a SWOT done even by big public multi-billion-dollar companies that would get anything better than a C in graduate school. I mean, they're terrible. Everybody keeps saying, I sell service with excellent people. And according to Peter Drucker, that's Drucker's second law of service, which says at times the best you can hope for is to be no worse than your competitor. And you really have to find a way that you become a blindingly obvious choice for the customers when they look at all the other alternatives. And I mean, two classic examples. I mean, you guys do a great job profiling this stuff. I mean, think about Wesco and Fastenal. Think about the reports and unique profiles you're doing. But they didn't do the same things everybody else did and do them better. They did different things. Wesco ends up managing the supply chain. The transactions flow through, but the reason they get retained by customers and they do contracts is because they take all the drama out of it. And if you look at MRO materials in general, nobody gets promoted. The people that get put into MRO purchasing, typically that's not a fast track to be a CEO. And there's just nothing but downside. The only two things that happen in the warehouse is product is lost or damaged, right? And so what Wesco and Fastenal have done is they said, let's think about what helps the customers. Where's the pain they're going through? And to me, this is so important now. You mentioned AI earlier. Every one of the customers that distributors are selling to have the same transition problems with their customers and competitors, and all this stuff is all up in the air. And what are they going to do with digital? What are they going to do with analytics? How do they change their organization? And they're in a lot of pain as well. And instead of sitting back whining, going, everybody just wants a better price, nobody's spending time figuring out how do I take the pain away from customers. You can see the examples. And this is another thing. The cost of technology has collapsed. It's cheap. Little small companies can do it. Big companies, it costs them so much money and so much oversight and consultants, and everything gets crazy. The smaller companies that are well managed can kick serious butt here, but people have to start thinking that way. It's not just about selling the same stuff. That's what I care about.
Yeah. What you just outlined there, Mike, I think is some of the larger national players will have an advantage for a little bit, but then due to disruption, technology, innovations, all of a sudden, a lot smaller and more nimble distributors are able to find niches where they can really take share and create a very differentiated value proposition. And it's, that's one of the beauties of the fragmented nature of this whole industry, really. And
as one touch point, I won't name names. Right now, I'm working with two distributors that are aspiring to be $100 million in revenue. But in terms of their sales transformation and their analytics and all the rest of it, they are more advanced than several multi-billion-dollar companies that I'm working with. I can say that because I'm not mentioning names.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you didn't. I think those 5 points really did a great job of outlining what our core focus is. And one of the key things is really what we do is dive into they really are, I think, the business model innovation components across sales process, across digital, and across the data analytics. We didn't really get into data analytics much today, but it's so foundational. It probably comes into your third one in particular. It's a combination of the proper preparation, but also the fixing poor processes, where for so many companies, it's first get your data cleaned up, get that under control, because if you continue to do any kind of innovation work, but you don't have good data in place, you're going to be fixing a lot of problems down the road.
Exactly. Information is the fuel of account penetration, and I'd like to say something that, especially for people that haven't been to Shift, what happened to that new VP of sales I told you about at the beginning? He had a religious experience. Part of what he still talks about, and that was over a year ago. The program in Shift is designed, there's a lot of informal networking. Everybody gets access. And so he ended up spending time with a lot of the speakers, and collecting business cards on LinkedIn and all the rest of it. But the beauty is that and going back to my first failure about not having appropriate expectations, he'd see something up there in the stage or one of the panels, and he had the ability to go up and say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about it, but it's that one-on-one. So it's not death by PowerPoint. Because, zebras like to hang with zebras, and they get to see, if nothing else on the panels, on my sales transformation panel, we'll identify some scar tissue and cow pies that, well, whatever you're doing to go down this path, don't do these 3 things, but I mean, everybody, we're all just trying to get to the same place. So that informal conversation is really important.
Yeah. You and I have been working on this for 8 years, and I just want to finish this off by saying that we have structured this event, and we kick off the event, and the opening 2 hours of it is benchmarking. You're at a round table, and you are benchmarking what your company looks like as across these different dimensions of where are you in sales process, where are you in digital, where are you in data analytics, and also where are you in the culture and team that you have, because that's the other critical piece of this in terms of being able to execute on successful transformation. So given that, then the next day we dive into a lot of the fire hose of concepts and peer groups and roundtables and all of that. We wrap this up actually at the end with a change management workshop before you go home, just to kind of put everything into context and give you a little bit of more tactical ideas and concepts to work with. Really looking forward to being there with you. And I really believe we've got the strongest program to cover all the elements, what it looks like to really create meaningful change in a company today.
I think this is going to be the strongest one we've ever done. And I had occasion to hang out with Kevin Sachs from McKinsey last week. The stuff that Kevin's going to share in terms of that benchmarking is going to knock it out of the park. It's hard for me not to say anything until he's actually presented it, but it's cool.
Very much looking forward to it. Thanks for your time today, Mike.
Thank you, sir.